All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dannyology. This is episode 65, and it is called There Is No Normal. You can consider this the sequel to It's Going to Be Okay from last week, but you don't have to listen to last week's episode to listen to this one. Even though it is related, they're separate enough to where you can listen to them in any order that you please. Even if you don't listen to the other one, that's okay too. This can stand alone. So, let's talk about the title for a second. But before we talk about the title, let me talk about something else that's going on, and that is a new book that I have coming out called How a 25-Year-Old Learned He Wasn't the Only One Going to Heaven. And let me say where that title came from. If you're affiliated with the Churches of Christ at all, even if you just know about them, you'll know that we get two questions. Those two questions are, ain't y'all the ones who think you're the only ones going to heaven? And the other question is like it, which is, hey, ain't y'all the ones that ain't got any music? And both of those questions are, they're actually they're correct. Yeah, we do believe we're the only ones going to heaven. At least we did. I don't believe that anymore, hence the title of the book. And of course, we don't use instruments in our worship. Not that we think it's wrong. Well, okay, a lot of us do think it's wrong, but I don't. So I just prefer a cappella personally. But even that's kind of not true because I do love to play guitar. I love to play piano. I like to play mandolin. But it's not something that I would want to push. If someone else wants to do that, like down the road, yeah, I mean, I might get behind them and support them. But where I'm at right now, dude, I love acapella music. I'd sing acapella all day. That's what I want on Sunday mornings. And to me, any change from that, from my particular situation, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Down the road, who knows? Right now, nah. Okay, anyways, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so the book is called How a 25-Year-Old Learned He Wasn't the Only One Going to Heaven, and it's an answer to that question. Ain't y'all the ones who think that you're the only ones going to heaven? Yeah. The answer to that question is yes, we did, but now I don't. And the story in the book is about how I came to the conclusion that I wasn't the only one going to heaven. In fact, the very first thing I do is I go into this mathematical thing to show that if I was right about who got to go to heaven, that would be about 1 in 4,000 people goes to heaven. And even that number, as I explain in the book, is a bit generous. So that's what the book's about. If you want to order it, you can't yet, but if you're interested in the information, you can go to danielr.net and read the little blurbs I put there about the book and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll eventually get something in your email that's like, hey, the book's been released and I should purchase it, and that would be awesome. Okay, let's talk about back to normal, or let's talk about how there is no normal, so that we can talk about why back to normal is sort of not a good idea. So we're in COVID, right? And we just hit 1 million deaths. So let's just take a moment to let that soak in, right? In the past 2 years, 2020, 2021, and now the very beginning of 2022, we've already had 1 million people die from this disease. That's a pretty big deal, right? That's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of empty chairs at the tables, as they say, right? A lot of season ticket owners, are not going to be showing up to stadiums next year, right? So people say, though, when they talk about COVID, hey, I can't wait to get back to normal. Let's just get back to normal. Oh, man, I'm just excited for the day when it finally gets back to normal. We don't have to worry about this COVID thing anymore. Yeah, there is no normal. There is no normal. There's no way to get back. There's no way to resurrect the people who've passed away. There's no way to give the nurses that witnessed all these people die the emotional, mental, and spiritual stability that they had before they went into this pandemic, right? We now view the world a whole lot differently. It turns out that we are a whole lot more connected than we thought that we were. We already knew that through the internet, but COVID made it real, right? COVID made us realize, yeah, wow, my actions, I'm a guy over here in China, but my actions, yeah, they might affect the whole world, right? Yeah, I might just be one person in Albertville, but man, I can do one thing, make one mistake, do one screw up, and really change the trajectory of of what humanity looks like right now? Yeah, you can. Which brings us to the whole point about sin, right? Sin does matter. Like, yeah, your white lie, it's the butterfly effect. It's bigger than yourself, right? When one person messes up, it's not just about the one person. It's about how the whole world shifts in a direction when sin enters into the picture. There's also this other thing that that happened during COVID that school teachers especially picked up on, and that is we lost about 2 years of growth during COVID. We had 2 years there where kids weren't in the social setting that they're used to, where churches were closed down, schools were closed down. They weren't like they usually are, right? There's a lot that shifted, a lot that was stunted in those 2 years. Movies didn't get released on time, lots of things happen. But now we view everything a little bit differently. School. Think about how many churches did not have a live stream before COVID, but now have live streams. I mean, people were starting to use their phones to live stream to Facebook and stuff like that. But because of COVID, man, that got ramped up. And think how much that changes church membership. I mean, how many people are there who don't even attend church anymore because they just watch it from the house? And so that sort of what's it called, FOMO, fear of missing out, is not really there anymore for Sunday mornings because they can just tune into the live stream. You know what I mean? And so not only are churches moving away from the Hebrews 10:25, you have to go to church every single time the doors are open or you're going to hell thing, but now they've got the pandemic that's taught people that they can listen to the sermon from home. And when we trick ourselves into thinking that the essence of church attendance is listening to the sermon, then yeah, no wonder people are staying home. But when you see that church attendance is necessary for the communion, I'm not talking about the crumb and the swallow that you do. I'm talking about the fellowship, the community, being with other like-minded people, working together to make this world a better place through the gospel of Christ. Yeah, like that's such a dimension that went underemphasized before the pandemic, and so now people think that they can just sit at home and attend church. Dude, what? Like, you're just missing out on a lot of stuff there. And I get the safety aspect of it and all that. Totally, that's what I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the people who, on this side of the pandemic, right? Numbers are dropping, all that sort of stuff. And they think that attending church is simply getting the sermon, right? Checking off some list. Dude, that's such a cheap view of church. And it's our fault. It's preachers' fault. Because we stress attendance. You just got to be there. You got to hear got to sit through the whole thing. Got to put in your hour, right? And that's made people lose sight of how important integrating into a faith community really is. Okay. We also view school differently. How many homeschoolers were vindicated during the pandemic, right? Now everybody's homeschooled. Everybody knows what it's like to do schoolwork on the computer, to do schoolwork in clusters of workbook pages that you get in the mail. It changed everything. It gave teachers a different perspective on things. It gave the students a different perspective, the janitorial staff. Now all of a sudden we have these questions of like, are some of these professions, are some of these roles, do they have to be defined as they are now? Can we change those? Can we develop them? Do we need as many? Do we need more? Do we need less? What's the deal, right? Also work. Think of how many occupations now are from home. They can close the office buildings down. They can cut down on the electricity bills, all these, things, and it's going to be okay. People apparently can get things done without having to clock in at 8 and clock out at 5. Imagine that, right? Another thing it did for work, though, right, is it almost gave people more hours in the sense that they weren't able to separate that whole thing from being at home and being in the office, and so the two sort of merged together, and so they might have found themselves answering more emails from the house or taking more calls after hours or, answering text messages from their boss at strange times. Things are a little bit different now. We've become more aware of time and where we put our energies and what we go do and what we don't go do, and this whole thing has changed. There is no going back to normal because there is no normal. Now, this whole idea of going back to normal, it's like it shows up in everything, right? I mean, in every aspect of our life. It shows up in politics. We gotta make America great again, right? There's something back there somewhere. 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 50 years, 70 years. And if we could just get back there, then everything would be good. But when you think about that, though, like when you actually like critically think, because it sounds good on the surface, right? What does 50 years ago look like for a black person? What does 100 years ago, 200 years ago look like for a Native American? What does 100 years ago look like for a woman who wants to vote in the upcoming election, right? So you go back far enough. So where is it? Where's the perfect golden age, right? I had this whole thing on my Facebook years ago, 2016 or so, Make America Godly Again. When was that ever? When was America godly? I mean, we have In God We Trust on our coins, but like from my perspective, everybody was going to hell anyways. So when was the majority of Americans members of the Church of Christ? You know what I mean? We have these like ideas. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. When really it's not as good back there as we remember it. Okay. Things aren't like the normal before the pandemic might not have been that good. Might not have been all that great, right? We talk about we need to go back to the first century. Man, if the church could just get back to the first century, who then would be the church? Oh yeah, you want to go back to the first century? You really do? You want to go back in a time when there was widespread persecution and people were being used as torches in Nero's garden? Like that sounds good to you? Really? You know what I mean? And so people use this language without seriously thinking about it. Or someone says they want to go back to the Bible. Oh yeah, that's a popular one, isn't it? And it does sound good. Like it really does sound good. And I know what they mean by that, right? We want to call Bible things by Bible names, stuff like that. The problem with that though is going back to the Bible for some people means let's see how the Bible can guide us to live as Christians in the 21st century. Going back to the Bible for other people means, hey, Abraham had a couple different wives. David had a few wives. Why can't I have a few wives? Going back to the Bible for some people means, hey, why can't we kill off an entire population and dash their babies' heads against the stones like they did in the Old Testament? Going back to the Bible for some people means, hey, why not? Why not slavery, right? The curse of Ham, Ham's descendants were cursed. So, I mean, they're cursed anyways. Why not use them for our advantage? Going back to the Bible is misleading because what people really mean by that is let's get back to the way that I read the Bible growing up. Let's go back to the way that my mother and father read the Bible. Let's go back to the way that the preachers of the 20th, 19th, 18th century read the Bible. That's not really getting back to the Bible, is it? Or going back to the first century is, again, let's go back, which what that's really saying is, let's go back to the way that I perceive things to have been in the first century. Yeah, you want to go back to wearing a head covering? You want to go back to not wearing any jewelry? You want to go back to men lifting their hands everywhere to pray? Oh, you don't want to do that stuff, but you want to keep the thing about women keeping silent in the church? You don't want to do the holy kiss? You don't want to wash feet, but you want women to only ask questions to their husbands at home? Like, you know what I mean? Those sayings are misleading. The problem is that they sound so good that they lure us in, then they trap us into some sort of system that's not even consistent, right? We have no consistency in dealing with some of this. It's impossible to undo. As one of my favorite authors says, once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you taste, you cannot untaste. Once you experience, you cannot unexperience. I don't want to go back anywhere. Because if I believe that Jesus is moving us forward with the gospel, if we're headed somewhere, why would I want to go back anywhere? That doesn't make any sense. When Jesus said, follow me, he didn't like sit in a chair on the beach in Galilee. He was constantly moving around from town to town, from place to place, up mountains, down mountains, to Jerusalem, back from Jerusalem, visiting different people, going to other places. He said to follow me. And if we truly believe that Jesus is still leading us somewhere be it through the Spirit, be it through the Word, whatever, through the gospel, then why would I want to go back anywhere? Wouldn't going back actually be a step in the wrong direction, right? Because if the gospel is so much beyond where I'm at now, if I'm not perfect, then I don't want to go back to a place where I was less mature, less knowledgeable, less than I am today, would I? I mean, I want to be where I'm at and continue to move forward. In a similar way, I don't want to raise my son to be like me. I want to raise my son to go to places and to do things and to imagine things and to create things and to live in a world that I can't even picture right now. I mean, my family had no idea about cell phones and the internet and podcasting and stuff like that. And so I don't want to raise my son to be like me. I want to raise my son to take the gifts that I can give him to move beyond the negative things that I will inevitably give him, and to be a kind of person that I can never even imagine, but that I can affirm and support and encourage and cheer on the whole time, right? We have to move forward. We can't go back to 2019. 2019's gone. We can't go back to 1970. 1970's gone. We can go back to the 1800s. We can go back to the 1492. We're here in 2022. We've got to face the facts of where we are, and we've got to see what is God doing among us today. What is the gospel accomplishing among us today? Where is he leading us? He ain't leading us backwards. He's leading us forwards. We got to keep moving forward. Some key points here. Growth. What can we learn? What lessons are available to us right now? What Bible passages are showing themselves to us? I read this one the other day. It said, it was in Leviticus 19, I think. He said, "Do not curse a deaf man." Do not curse a deaf man. What? Okay, so like, take that somewhere. You know, where could you take? You could take that to gossip. You could take that to literally not cursing a deaf man. It kind of goes back to the old joke. What can you say? You know, what can you say to a shark? Whatever you want, he can't hear you. You know, it could talk about. You could take that into social media. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can take that theme of do not curse a deaf man. Where it's like a few weeks ago, I realized that Matthew 3 said, "You'll be baptized with the Holy Spirit and fire," not the Holy Spirit or fire. Like, whoa, there's a lot of lessons there, huh? But there's all these little passages that keep popping up day to day. They just are so relevant for things that we have to deal with today. And if I go back somewhere, then I'm going to miss what I'm seeing now in Scripture. And I don't want to do that. We can't untaste something. You can't unsee something. Here's something else. This is a big one. This is from my friend Brian McLaren in a book called The Great Spiritual Migration. He said, you can't repeat 6th grade 6 times to graduate. Okay, so you can't go through 6th grade and then repeat it 6 times and expect to get a high school diploma. You got to go to 7th grade. You got to go to 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And if we sincerely believe that the gospel still has things to teach us, is still taking us somewhere, is still on an upward trajectory, right? If the new covenant, if the prophecies in the New Testament weren't about an end, just an end, but they were about a beginning, right? Then where does this go? Where's the next step? What does 7th grade look like? What does 11th grade look like? I don't want to repeat 6th grade for the rest of my life, man. It gets old. Like I get tired listening to the same sermons, right? I mean, if I that's one of the reasons why I wasn't a big fan of gospel meetings, is because it was like the same 5 sermons. And yeah, sure, there was some variety thrown in there every now and then. But it was basically the same stuff. You got to be baptized to go to heaven. Can't use instrumental music. Everybody in the denominational world's going to hell. And then there was one sermon to scare you into repenting from like 2 Thessalonians 1. I mean, it was all the same stuff. And I took this class. I took this class one time where I read the whole book that was assigned, and I took all the quizzes and all the tests. I didn't have to read that book, though. Man, I could have taken that test because it was the same stuff I heard my entire life. I'm tired of being in 6th grade. I want to go to 7th grade. We're at the end of May. It's time to graduate, baby. We don't need to go back to kindergarten. Think about that, like like a parent says, like, I wish he was still in kindergarten, and he's like an 8th grader. Like, there might be some sort of nostalgic reason, but do you really want your kid to go back to kindergarten? I mean, seriously? Like, you can't make them a kindergartner again. So what you'd basically be doing is taking an 8th grade human and sticking them in a kindergarten class. And we know from Adam Sandler that don't work out too well, right? All right. Oh, yeah. Okay, I skipped a bunch of points and covered them anyways. Great. Let's see. Yeah, so 2 Peter 1 teaches us that there's always things that we can be adding. Add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge temperance, to temperance patience, to patience godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity, to brotherly kindness love. That's the King James version, pretty sure, and that's to the best of my memory. But that passage, he says, if these qualities continually abound and are ever increasing, is another expression, you're not going to forget who you are, right? Ever increasing. That means there's never a point where I can say I've got enough knowledge. There's never a point I can say I've got enough brotherly kindness. There's never a point where I can say I've got enough faith. There's never a point I can say I've got enough love. There's always another step. There's always another path. There's always another road to go down, because I'm never going to be as perfect as God is, as perfect as Jesus is. There's always going to be some aspect of his life that through imitating, I can become more like him. Here's another thing. This is from a book called, I think I got it here. It's called Ethics, and it's a book on systematic theology by James William McClendon Jr. He is a Baptist. He does not like the term Anabaptist for reasons he explains. They wouldn't baptize the first time. But anyways, in his book on ethics, what he says is this. On this way, God too is a traveler. When his people ask for his name, his essence, he answers Jehovah, right? Yahweh. That is, I will be what I will be. Or more freely, you will come to know me only as you follow me. So Jehovah then is, Yahweh is God the companion. How about that? You will know me. You'll come to know me only as you follow me. That's an awesome line right there, right? Follow, though, involves movement. Jesus, in fact, he says, follow me a gajillion times, but the word Christian's only used 3 times. He uses the disciple quite a bit. Christians only used 3 times. We're followers of Christ. We're disciples. We're learning from him. We're sitting at the feet of the Master. The word Christian, though, was more, it came a little bit later than those other ones. Those, Jesus's primary designations for his followers was just that, followers and disciples. Okay, this next one, it comes from page 225 in the same book, chapter 8. And what he talks about is he says, Jesus sees where the story is going and accordingly gives new overall direction to the way. He says, to be perfect is not to be flawless. It is rather to take Jesus' way, the way of the ripe or full-grown kingdom now at hand. He says, but as showing how to take all the rest, the direction of Torah, these summaries found in Matthew 5 have an important role. So what he talks about is how the word Torah, it means way, right? In a sense. So Torah is the will of God. Torah is the way. Torah is the path that they were to follow. It is how they would come to know Christ. And so Jesus sees he is the way, and he sees where the story is going, and he gives it this awesome direction in him. And so this whole page here is about how we can emulate Jesus and come to know him through emulating him, and how we can set other people on this direction of Torah. So that's a pretty cool chapter. Anyways, this book's really good. It's called Ethics, Systematic Theology. It's pretty deep, but I think you'll appreciate that anyways. So Jesus is the way to the Father, right? The path to the Father. And so following God then means going down this path, not a stadium where you go take a seat, not a pew that you go sit in, but a path, a trail, a walkway, a journey, a pilgrimage. One of the key themes in the New Testament was Exodus, right? It's like this idea of being on a travel, being on a journey. And what better expression to use to describe this life than a journey? So, do we want to go back to normal? No, that's kind of boring. We want to go forward, keep moving forward. There is no normal. In fact, I don't want to go and stay anywhere, right? See, standing still, that's not very fun. So even like wherever it is that we're going, we'll still be going. So like we might get to 7th grade, but I want to stay in 7th grade forever, keep moving. I don't want to stay in 12th grade forever. I want to keep moving. When I graduate, I don't want to maintain the level of knowledge that I had upon graduation. I want to read more books and learn more and find new teachers and continue to grow and continue to learn and continue to mature. And that should be the same in our faith as well. We don't want to get back to how it was before the pandemic. That was like 3 years ago. Do you really want to go back 3 years? Really? We can't do it. Yes, it's sad. Lives were lost. Things have been changed. Tragedy has struck. But these things have also caused us to mature and to grow. And we have to keep moving forward. Standing still is not an option. Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 1 that if we are not continually growing and abounding, then we're basically a dead tree. We're a dead tree. We forgot who we are. We forgot how we've been purchased. And we will not be able to make our calling and election sure that way. But through growing continually in the grace and knowledge of Jesus, we can't help but to become more like him. Back to normal? Nah, there is no normal. See y'all next week for Dannyology.